Sorry, guys, I'm just going to start the recording on it, just in case we talk about anything interesting that we might miss.
Yeah, the mushroom cloud thing was definitely La Palma, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
I did precog news as well, although I only did it halfway through the month. I did it on the 16th, I think, and I got a volcano with an observatory on it. And then 2 days later, La Palma went up.
yeah.
I didn't get a mushroom cloud though, so
Well, it was interesting that lots of different remote viewing groups, all independently, in the same short period of a few weeks, came up with strange mushroom cloud events. I found that really interesting. Because even Don posted something, and Don went a step further than I did, and I think in Crypto because Don actually, if he's not here at the moment, but he sometimes comes along. He actually said volcano in his RV session. Uh,
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he was spot on.
yeah, yeah. I didn't get a volcano and fire and lava in any way. So all good to Don on that one. I think Farsight pretty accurate as well. I think they got mushroom cloud events as well. So yeah, good month.
presumably Farsight reported that it was caused by a UFO, did they?
The Galactic Federation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
We best not go down that route, I don't think.
What I noticed with Farsight is that their free course is not free anymore. They have it now on Prime, on their Prime thing.
Oh. Is that the videos of SRV?
Yeah,
Everything they had on SRV for free, the videos, the audios, everything.
Oh wow.
all
Yeah,
taken down off
everything.
YouTube.
Yeah, they're taken off YouTube and now it's on Farsight Prime.
Oh.
On the off
Yeah.
chance that anybody actually wants to watch that stuff, I know somebody who downloaded it all, so hop onto the Discord.
I have a lot of it as well. I have all the audio and all the manuals. In fact, I even have an SRV manual, the very first one, but I only have it in paper form because it's the first manual that I used and trained with, and that was in the early '90s. So I had that, and to be honest, it was actually quite good back then. The early version, it wasn't as complex as these later versions are. Maybe I should scan it in and put it online, but it's quite thick. I think it's about 120 pages or so. But just let you guys know, I have been putting lots of stuff online today on YouTube. I've put what did I put online? I put the Real X Files documentary from the early '90s. I think '94 online. I put Secret Rulers of the World 3-part documentary. That's interesting because it's got lots of Prudence stuff and lots of interviews with lots of people in it. It's a bit wacky, but it's good to watch.
Is it right now in your YouTube?
Yes, yeah, it's on my YouTube.
Oh,
What else did I put online? I have to be.
Games.
Yeah, I put the Ed Dames very first TRV training set of tapes online as well. They're really good as well because it's very, very in the early days. It's very close to original Ingo Swan CRV. And as well as the training tapes, there's like an hour and a half long documentary about SciTech and how they went public and stuff, and that's called The Impossible Challenge.
yeah,
What
I
else?
see it here. That's
Yeah.
cool. How do you get those?
To be honest, I've had all this stuff for years, other than the SciTech tapes, because people send me stuff. So someone sent me
Oh,
those. They
nice.
said they had them on VHS tape that they bought years ago, uh, and they were going to get rid of them. And would I like a copy?
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, this is great.
To be
Kind of
honest, I might
stuff.
get in trouble at some point for posting it all online because it's copyright of other people. But I have put a little note on there that I'm only doing it for history and prosperity's sake because this kind of stuff on VHS is going to disappear, and
Yeah,
I'm not
for sure.
making any money on any of the videos on YouTube. That's all turned off now.
I've
Yeah.
downloaded them all. There's a program called YouTube DL, which lets you download stuff off YouTube. So I was like, I'm not going to watch however many days worth of video this is now, but just in case Daz gets hit with a takedown notice,
Yeah,
copyright strikes for 1990s VHS tapes.
I have got another one as well. I didn't put this one online though, but I did find it today. Let me see if I can get it off my list. Where is my list? And this is a great one as well. I was going to put it online. It's called Mind Dazzle, and it's another one by Ed Dames. But I didn't put it online because I found that someone else had put it online, so I just saved the link instead. So I'll share that in the chat now. But that's worth looking at as well, because again, it's another very early RV do it by video training method that Ed Dames come up with, and I'll just add that to the link here. So it's called Mind Dazzle. Yeah, that's on someone else's channels. But yeah, I would. Yeah, if you're interested in RV, I would recommend finding a way to download that or keep that as well. That's 1.5 hours. That's an interesting one as well.
Which one, Daz?
It's in the chat list. There, it's called Mind Dazzle.
Oh, man, didn't he have a board game called Mind Dazzle or something like that too?
He did, yes. Yeah. I think this might have accompanied it.
I'm dying to see that one. I've been looking for years, and I haven't been able to see it.
Well, it's on there, so that's interesting. You know, I'm not saying anyone should follow it as a remote viewing method, but it's worth looking at and how they do it. They use a template system.
Yeah, historical value,
Yes. Excellent. So does anyone have anything they want to discuss at the moment? I did see someone with their hand up, but it's gone at the moment.
That was Erica.
Erica, did you want to say something?
Yeah, that was me. I typed my question actually in the chat, and I had an idea. I have some problems with front loading. We have things happening, at least in my country where I'm right now living. So I decided, well, maybe I could just mix it with other targets and de-identify them all. And well, I wouldn't really know. Well, it's not up to me. It's just the idea was to mix with other targets. And I thought, I hope it would not contaminate the actual target as such, which is the most discussed global news, I guess, for November. Does that make sense? Or it is
possible to do it that way. I just find that, and everyone may be different on this, but my approach is that every time I do RV, dependent on what the project is, my flavor of CRV changes towards what I'm getting information for. So it's, if I know that I'm looking for a missing person, then I pull out a whole new set of tools in CRV than I would do if I was looking at a cryptocurrency. And if I'm looking at the news, it's completely my version or flavor of CRV is completely different, depending on what's needed by the client, really. And hiding it would mean that I might accidentally not use the right toolkit for the job.
So you're front loading yourself a bit for those tasks that you mentioned for this.
Yeah, I mean, if you're working a missing person task, really the missing person isn't the target. And knowing that you're working a missing target, I mean, even if the missing person were the target, you're talking one of billions, so you're still pretty blind. But really, when you're looking for a missing person target, then the target that the police want to know about isn't actually the missing person itself, because they obviously know about the missing person. They know what their name is, where they come from, all that kind of stuff. What they actually want off you is a GPS location. So knowing you're working a missing person target, all that tells you, because it doesn't tell you anything about the location of that person. What it does tell you, though, is you need to pull out of your bag some very good descriptive and tools to find a location. And for me, that would involve a certain amount of describing the location from key points of interest and doing a mapping technique and stuff. So being front load, you can work front loaded as long as the front loading doesn't really tell you anything specific about the targets.
Okay.
And when I am and all the people we work cryptos, we know we're working a crypto target. It's a growing target pool. I think I saw today is nearly up at 13,000. So it's growing at a rate of 200 new ones every month at the moment. So yeah, when we're working cryptos, we know we're front loaded and it's going to be one target out of 12,800.
Okay, so yeah, so it's pretty much a bag of tools, and
Yeah.
But I think I'll try this one. I'll try to de-identify and see what happens.
Yeah, everyone try your own methods. Go for it, John. I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, thanks. Jeff Mishlove published the interview with me that he did a week or so ago, and I wanted to make 2 additions to that, or 2 corrections or clarifications. I don't know if very many people have seen it yet, but I wanted to make these because I didn't get to do it on the video. And the first is that, although it's in the book, some of this is in the book, that it's important for success in the lottery to, at least for experience I've had, is to use future dates, not just the given date, but dates in the future. And someone else that I was working with suggested that idea. And it's not a new idea, and people do it on lottery posts and other places where they'll just bet for a whole week, 20 numbers, 20 states. That's kind of scattershot. But if you use a more targeted method, and just the first 4 days in particular, the statistics show that you'll get more hits. So I should have mentioned that. I wanted to mention that. I didn't get back to it in the interview with Jeff. And also, Elisa's here, and she was also a person that I was working closely with the lottery for a while, and she was getting some good results too. So I don't know if she wanted to talk about that at all, but she's very talented in many ways, and particularly she got some good results on the lottery. And just the second point was, although it's a different topic, I mentioned groups that are conducting work with clients, paying clients, and I've often mentioned Iris in France, and also Gail Husick's group in Seattle. Now, Gail has told several of us that she's either going on hiatus or shutting down. Mainly, I think, just a hiatus. But Sandra Hilliard wrote me yesterday and said, "Why don't you mention me too?" And the only reason I hadn't was that I didn't know that she had a lot of paying customers, and apparently she does. They're flooding in. So there's a third group that uses CRV that has successful client work going. And if there are any others, I'd like to mention those too when it comes up. Lately, I guess I've been commenting online and stuff. So Dan Daz mentioned that too about Gail's group, and it's not active right now. So if people know of any other groups that are doing paying clients, hard targets and stuff like that, I think we should spread the word. Now, there are individuals like Daz does some, and other folks do as individuals. Joe McMonagle and Angela Thompson Smith had clients. So there are individuals out there. But if there are different groups, whatever country they're in, it would be really good to start publicizing them because there are so few. So those are the 2 points I wanted to raise about my talk with Jeff Mishlove.
I think Brett Stewart's doing really well. I mean, I don't know if he has a formal group, but he does run lots of remote viewers on projects.
Right, yeah. And also, as we know, on crypto, and he has one paying customer, a crypto customer, according to him. And he says he'll release the results of that at the end of the year or next year, because he recognized that without publishing statistics, people can say anything, but you need to show your statistics if you're going to be believed.
Yeah. Thanks for that, John.
Okay.
Does anyone else have anything they want to share, want to ask? Do you reckon we might be able to get Henny to talk about her latest project later? Would you be
Don
willing
has
to
his
do that?
hand up.
Oh, go for it, Don.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to ask John. John, I got your book, but I haven't had a chance to read it. There is just so much going on anymore these days with the shows that you can watch on YouTube and, Gaia and whatever. Like, I'm really running out of time. I even asked Daz how he's able to keep up with his schedule since I can't even keep up with mine, and he does more than I do. But the thing that I wanted to ask you, first of all, I didn't completely understand that bit about the lottery thing, about using the future dates. Could you say a little bit more about that, please?
Sure. Well, most people, when they bet the lottery, they'll just buy a ticket for the given day or draw today, the 8th of October. That, in my opinion, is a mistake. You should always buy for the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or at least go back and buy in those subsequent days, because the statistics I compiled on my own lottery work, and that the 2 folks I was working with also had some stats that suggest that you get far more hits than you would think by betting the first, second, and third and fourth day, or the first and second and fourth draw, depending on how you're doing it. There's just Joe McMonagle and Ingo Swann, as we point out in our book, comment that time is a little bit fuzzy, apparently, when it comes to psi. Joe McMonagle even says, what if I told you that every time someone remote views, they get a little bit into the past and a little bit into the future, and nobody talks about it. He says, this is in his book, The Ultimate Time Machine, and one of the other books. And Ingo Swann said something similar when he was trying to predict some symbols and letters and numbers that were coming up in sequence. He said, sometimes they just all pile up, waiting to be called. They all pile up, you can see them. If you can maintain your mental framework, you can call them correctly. So he too thought that, and he even said explicitly that time kind of gets fuzzy when he was trying to do that. So those two top guys saying that time's a little bit tricky here, it appears that you can harness it in the lottery and perhaps in other areas too. So I don't know if that's clearer, Don. That's about as clear as I could make it, I think.
No, that does explain exactly what the confusion that I had. Okay, and the other thing that I guess I wanted to ask, and I know this is cheating, but since I have not yet had a chance to read your book, did you, in your research, did you have like a favorite section that you thought was like, particularly interesting?
No, every chapter is dynamite.
Okay.
No, well, I favored the lottery because Deborah didn't really have any experience there, and because I'd had some success, and other people had had success, I was really keen on that. Also on alphanumerics, because that's like the last frontier, or a frontier we haven't conquered yet. But other people may have other interests, not so much in that. And Deborah has skills in explaining things. So some of the chapters on how to run a project and all sorts of things. So. And we have 20 contributors in there who did work in remote viewing and ARV in particular. So they're all very interesting. But yeah, that was my favorite, but may not be yours.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
As we're on the cryptos thing, Paul asked a question in the chat. Can you short cryptos as well as buy them? You can. I don't know much about doing that myself. That's too risky a strategy for me. I think Brett might do it. David, do you know if Brett does that?
I've got no idea. I think maybe this is not financial advice, that certain exchanges offer products, the nature of which I'm not really certain of, which are equivalent allegedly to shorting cryptos, but whether it's a real short or not, or just a sort of
I think Robin Hood's one of them, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm not the right person to ask about cryptos. Grin Spicket probably knows, but I don't think he's here this evening.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can do it on apps like Robinhood and maybe eToro and others. And I think you can leverage them as well, but I haven't gone down that route as well because I've seen people leveraging cryptos in trades for.
Well, Warren Buffett says leverage is the only way a smart man can go broke. Might not be Warren Buffett, actually, to be fair, but somebody does.
It just seems crazy. Some people are leveraging 10 times the value that they're putting in, and then when it crashes, they owe big. So I stay away from anything like that, to be honest. Who was it who asked it? It was Paul. To be honest, Paul, I would just do what the rest of us are doing. Use your intuition and information and buy at the right time and then sell at the right time. And it's pretty easy to make a fairly decent amount of money out there. Many of us are doing it. Brett's doing it to great effect. We're doing it in crypto viewing all on our own to great effects as well. And it's easy to do. It's the crest. I mean, it's something new. It's like the internet was way back in the mid to late 90s. It was new, it was fresh, it was the Wild West. Anything could happen. And you had all these naysayers saying, "Oh, the internet's rubbish. It's never going to go anywhere. It's only just for computer geeks." And yet, look at it now. This decade or two later, it's pretty much controls every part of our lives, and that's what many of us believe that's going to happen with cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. It's just that we're way ahead of the curve and the wave right now. But it's definitely coming. You can see it in everyday life. Like literally, I just read the news today, just before I came on, and here in the UK, people don't use cash as much anymore because of COVID. You know, people didn't want to touch cash, so they were using cards. And you know, there's all the cards now. I guess you all got them where you just touch your card and it gets on the machine. The rate started off at I think £15 in the UK limit on that. In COVID, it went up to £45, and starting from I think next week in the UK, the rate of that's jumped up to £100 for each transaction. So it's becoming commonplace now for, you know, these kind of new credit digital ways of doing things, and cash is becoming less and less and less in society.
I'd like to add to that. If you think you're late for Bitcoin, and I was late for it, Grin on Reddit is really looking into NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and Daz too has mentioned it. And I just don't have the time right now to get into it, but I would recommend someone who wants to jump into this, try to research NFTs and see what's going on there. It may fade, it may not, but I think it won't actually. I think there's something there that Grin has spotted, and Daz too. Non-fungible tokens, check it out.
Yeah, it's growing massively. It's become a 1.4 trillion business in, I think, 12 months. It's just absolutely massive. And it's all based on a technology called non-fungible tokens. And essentially anything can be digitized and put on the blockchain. And they're doing a lot with a lot of rare kind of artworks and pieces of art at the moment. That's what's really going really fast at the moment. But you know, it's really good for things like items in games. If any of you play games, you can buy and sell and trade them on the NFT space blockchain as well. Yeah, it's becoming really big, and lots of money to be made in it at the moment. Paul, you got your hands up. Do you wanna chat and ask?
Yeah, thanks, Daz. I appreciate what you and everybody else is saying about about buying cryptos at the right time and selling them at the right time. My personal interest for probably 40 years now has been futures trading, and this is something that's not for the faint of heart. The trick is to have proper money management, so you only use the proper proportion of your capital, and that you have fairly tight stops, so that if you lose your internet connection, you're out. If things go bad, or if you're you know, you don't have to make a choice. If things are going bad, you're out. And the thing that I have found that works, I mean, I've tried remote viewing. I'm not having a, you know, I can very successfully remote view, but for some reason, every time I turn to cryptos, it's like less than 50-50. So I've gone back to, I don't know, understand why that happens, but it's just the way it works with me. And what I've done is I've gone back to traditional trend analysis, and that seems to work quite well. As long as you have the money management, proper proportion, and the stops. But excuse me. In the U.S., the CME now has micro Bitcoin futures, which is got a very low margin, and it gives you really, you know, fantastic leverage. It's like 80 to 1, and if you're able to successfully trade futures, which probably one person in 100 can do, it's really quite nice. There are elsewhere in the world, like in Asia, they have Ethereum futures. In Switzerland, they have probably a dozen different futures on cryptos. So it's another, you know, if you're someone like me whose remote viewing capability seems to draw a line when it comes to cryptos, this is something that's another option. But you have to understand that if you go into this fresh, your chances of success are extraordinarily small. You know, you need to have a lot of experience and a lot of discipline and a lot of training. And so I just, you know, but my personal interest is cryptos to futures.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tried doing remote viewing. For some reason, I just personally can't do it. I can do it for everything else, but I can't do it with that. I don't know why.
Okay, yeah. Paul, are you aware of the work we do at Crypto Viewing? Because we have a guy that works for us called Marty Hibbs. He does a lot of futures, and him and Dick do weekly analysis of futures and crypto charts.
Well, I find the returns with conventional crypto trading to be quite boring, to be honest with you. I know they're successful, and I respect that, and it sure beats just buying a fund on the a stock exchange fund or something like that. But if you can do futures trading, you can leave all that stuff in the dust. But like I say, it's one person out of 100 that can do that successfully.
Yeah. Well, if you get a chance, I would recommend you have a look at see what Marty does, because I don't follow it immensely, but he does go through it every week, and he does do quite a lot of futures. He was doing soybeans and all kinds of stuff recently on video, and him and Dick were making quite a bit of money with that as well.
Who is that? Can you put it in the chat?
It's videos that go out to the subscribers, to be honest, of Crypto View. I can put a link in the chat, and so you can have a look at it. I don't know if they have an element where people can trial and have a look at the stuff. But I like what Marty does. He knows his charts, and he shows you his stop points and his sell points and buy points, and gives you all the indicators and that kind of stuff. As I said, it's not all futures, but he does look at futures in there with it. They always look at things like gold, silver. I know they did soybeans because I thought that was interesting when they were describing how much they made and why they were buying that and stuff. I'll see if I can get a link to you in some way now.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else want to put their hand out, have anything to say, or should we go to the chat box and have a look what's in there? Go for it, Don.
Okay, John, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, I guess I wanted to go over. I was just typing you a message, but I might as well just ask it. I wanted to go over how the exact way someone might perceive the digits out of a 6-digit lottery number. The way that I was doing it, and I actually got 4 out of 6 one time.
Very good.
And the way I did it was the New Jersey lottery. They have a web page that shows the winner, the big winner for that particular lottery, and each of the numbers is in a bubble. So what I did was I screen grabbed that graphic, dropped it into Photoshop, removed the numbers. So now the bubbles were empty. And then I would just go through them one by one by one. The first trick that I had was you try to decide whether the first bubble has 1 element or 2. In other words, a single-digit number or a 2-digit number. If you only perceive one thing in there, that makes it a little bit easier. And then you go to the next one and the next one and the next one. I had problems with reversals. In other words, getting 6s instead of 9s, 5s instead of 3s, a little bit similar shapes kind of a thing. But anyway, that was just what I did. I don't do it very often. And did you come up with anything sort of like that, or did you, have a technique for it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I could talk about this for an hour or two, but and in the book, there, we have 2 chapters on the lottery, one by myself and one by Sean McNamara, who's also been exploring it. And I also list a document that I posted on 10,000 Roads years ago that listed like 31 different remote viewing methods to try to get numbers. So I don't, methods will vary with people's preferences. For example, a guy named Kahu Dave in Hawaii, really neat guy, been very successful in getting a very major lottery, which he didn't want us to talk about because he's writing a book himself, but he also has success in the casinos and all that. And some people say, well, that's so money grubbing. No, no, no. Dave wants to build a center for children in Hawaii, and his Hawaiian ancestors are helping him, he feels, getting some hits. And so he posts videos about his method, which involves drawing a little cartoon for each one of, say, 69 numbers, and then remote viewing and finding out which of those cartoons he actually draws that correspond to the winning numbers. So that's a completely different method from anything I would do. And he's very bold and brave in posting that stuff day after day, week after week. And he's won a couple $100 several times. I think he had 4 numbers like you did once. Most of the time he doesn't get that. So I have my own methods, which I've mentioned in detail in the book. But I'll just mention one other method that we also talk about. A woman in Massachusetts, we know, a remote viewer, Daz has seen the data. We've seen the proof that she won $101,000 using an interoceptive method where she would find out what the body signal was going to be for whether one of 39 numbers was a hit or not. And she said it varies, it can vary from day to day, although she was actually just doing this on a lark. Her partner was the one who wanted to bet this. So she said she found out that when her throat tightened up a certain way, when she pointed at a given number, that would indicate that it was going to be one of the winning numbers. And she had a sinking feeling in her tummy, indicating when it wasn't going to be. So she had a completely different method from Dave or me, an interoceptive method. And you have a different one, and other people have tried things like putting their hands on the lottery ticket and dousing that. There's all kinds of ways to do it. So whatever you find works for you. If you had 4 hits out of a big 6-figure lottery, that's impressive. So it does vary quite a bit.
It was, that one day where I had the 4, and I was like, you go by the numbers one by one as you're doing it. And after I got to 4, I really got nervous because 5 and 6 gets into the big money, which I didn't get. But the thing was, there's I felt like there was a real, I don't know. I think I thought, well, I got 4 this time. I'll just get 5 the next time, and then I'll get the 6 the next time. And of course, it never turned out that way. And that's when I sort of stepped back and didn't do it anymore. But anyway, I appreciate, your ideas there. There's the idea of having 69 different ideograms or drawings for each of the digits. Wow, that's...
Let me just add one thing, that I'm self-critical for not spending more time trying to find existing numbers, past numbers, where you could get telephones, and it would be so helpful to be able to get addresses and telephones for good purposes, and also for missing people and murders and stuff. Unfortunately, it would be misused too. But Deborah, my co-author, is going to run a study this fall with, I think with Michelle, about alphanumerics, and I'll probably take part in that. And I'm doing my own inquiries into that and gathering materials to try to view existing numbers, not future numbers.
You mean past winners?
No, nothing to do with the lottery, just numbers per se, because we were told from the beginning that you can't get numbers in words very easily, or you can't get them at all. But the Stargate Archives volumes actually show that the results were better than what we've been led to believe. If you read those archives, there were some interesting experiments there. So I've been tabulating all that, and I'm going to try some more experiments. And as I say, Deborah's also going to mobilize and try to. So a few other people have also emailed me. They want to work on this too. So we'll see how it goes. But rather than just the lottery, which has its merits, it's very difficult, even if you go for pick 3 and pick 4. Let's see if we can actually make a breakthrough with existing numbers or past numbers, sometimes called present numbers, as opposed to future numbers.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Excellent, guys. Sasha, you've had your hand up for a while. Would you like to ask your question or comment?
Well, thank you. I just wanted to comment on this. I know we've all heard of the 100th monkey effect, where if enough individuals learn how to do something, then it seems to be easier to pick up by other individuals. And I know that in chemistry, when they're synthesizing new crystal lattices, once it's synthesized in one lab, it just seems, well, it is a lot easier than to synthesize it in other labs. So that has negative consequences when we think of gain of function for viruses. because then when you're creating a synthetic virus that's more dangerous than what's in the wild, you're actually increasing the odds that that mutated virus will show up in the wild. But when it comes to remote viewing lottery numbers and just numbers in general, it would then seem that the more people remote view numbers, then maybe the easier it will be to do for other remote viewers. So it seems as though maybe we're creating a kind of template in, I don't know, the ether, the information stream, whatever you want to call it. Once that ether is created and set, it's a little bit easier to access by others. So I'm wondering if people think there are effects to that. So the original remote viewers that trained under Ingo and the military remote viewers tend to have this theory that we've tested everything, we've tried it all, and this is what works and this is what doesn't work. But if this theory is correct, that you can actually create templates in the system, that would mean that even though something may not have worked in the 1970s or 80s, it could still work now if enough people are learning how to do that specific thing, like remote view numbers. I don't know.
Can I ask you a question? Do you mean like the 100th monkey effect? Is that what you're talking about? Or numinosity due to a lot of people doing this at once?
Well, it's similar to that, but so the 100th monkey, I mentioned that at the beginning because that's what people are familiar with. But in science, it is a recognized phenomenon that once you synthesize a compound or a crystal lattice, it actually then is easier to synthesize it in other labs. So there does seem to be an effect where once you create a template in reality, then that's easier to recreate.
Well, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, and sure enough, there were many other people who finally broke it. For a while, they thought it was impossible. It was back in 1954 or something. Maybe because there have been a couple of big lottery wins and some smaller ones. Maybe that'll help start creating the 100th monkey effect too, now that people are paying more attention to it and publicizing it. So we'll see. Yeah, go for it. Some ideas on that.
Yeah, and I think it's just maybe a reminder that, okay, we don't want to waste our time doing things that have been proven not to work, but at the same time, we can't be too rigid, I think, in taking that advice.
Yeah, agree.
Guys, I think the problem we've had with numbers to date, generally, is that people jump on the bandwagon of trying to RV numbers, but in predictive scenarios or money-winning scenarios, rather than anyone going out and actually trying to learn themselves how to RV numbers, and then maybe at a later date when they get successful at doing that, then move on to doing future-based things. I think where we've gone wrong so far is most people are trying to do two hard things at the exact same time, because numbers we know are inherently hard, and they're adding that to the same time to trying to predict and maybe change lots of lives by winning money, which I think overcomplicates it at the same time. Okay, bear with me a second, just letting some people in. So let's have a look at the list here. John, I just want to see, because you said a comment earlier in the chat window, and I do agree with you that the crypto viewing marketing team, because it's not us as remote viewers that put out all the stuff about hits. We have a group of 5 marketing people, social media people that put those out. So I do agree with you that I wouldn't class half the stuff that they put out as being hits. But in regard to the mushroom cloud one, I would definitely class that as a hit, because that was 5 remote viewers all said they physically saw the mushroom cloud on that month, and all it's been on every news station, and there's 10 live camera news feeds to it, so it is like the top news story of last month, I would say.
Well, I'm glad to hear that that we agree on that, that some of those are not actual hits, so we can't verify them. But what about the volcano? Wasn't there some interpretation by someone in the crypto viewing ecosystem or sphere that it wasn't just a volcano, it was some sort of financial explosion? Didn't I see that? I haven't followed it closely. You may be right, but I thought that
I don't think so. All 5 viewers had, pretty much not identical images, but very similar images of an actual physical explosion with buildings and structures, in the vicinity of it. I don't think that's symbolic in any way of the financials. I mean, we do get financial stuff at the same time in the same RV session, but there's a clear lineage between different things on it, I believe. Yeah.
Well, there's so many volcanic eruptions every week, every day.
But they don't become global news like this one did.
True. Very few of them become global news.
Yeah.
So you may be right. I haven't looked at it closely, but
I mean, all I can say is for myself, my key was top global news of the month, and the volcano was the top global news of the month, and it's probably still is, and maybe even more so this month with all the ongoing YouTube feeds for it and everything that are live all the time. So that's all I can say on that radio. But yeah, I do agree that a lot of the stuff that the marketers do pick up on, because they're probably not trained remote viewers, they're marketers, I wouldn't class as being such valid hits, because I think they're a bit obscure.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Excellent. Is there any more questions in the chat window? I'm just trying to read through them a bit. And also, about the time thing as well. It was interesting to hear you say that, John, about the time being a bit fuzzy, because although I don't really agree with it, but Dick's been saying that for years in all our videos. When he does prediction stuff, especially for the news, he allows himself, even though we kind of set the target of looking a month ahead for the news, he sets himself in a personal target of, if it happens within 30 days or more after that month has ended, he still classes it as a hit, because he says his way of RV working can't stop and delineate when a month stops. It doesn't know to stop.
Well, that's something else we don't know. Maybe he's right. Maybe people have different time ranges in their subconscious, or that they're in touch with forces that enable them to remote view within certain ranges of time and not narrower ones. So it's possible, but as you raised, there's some questions about whether some of these vague ones are actually hits, and I haven't looked at Dick's either, so I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that. I'm a bit more harsh on myself. It's if I'm doing a project of looking at news in the next month, my cutoff date is the month, and anything that happens after that, I won't class it as a hit. But yeah, he has the same kind of idea about time. He thinks it's a bit more fuzzy, and you can't stop your subconscious going onwards a couple of days if it sees a big event that it wants to tell you about. That's all I can say on that one, really. Anyone got anything they want to share or ask then? Because I don't think we have many questions at the moment. I'm just reading through them a second. No, I think we've covered all the ones in the chat. Yeah, go for it, John.
I'm just reiterating. So does anybody here in this chat know of other groups or one or two people who have a company that have paying clients, whether they use CRV or natural or whatever methods? Because as I say, we maybe could name 4 groups and selected individuals.
I believe, hello, John, hello, everybody. I believe the German groups have some such projects involving clients, but I'm not very, very sure about. Maybe I'll find out and post in the next chats or something.
Are you referring to Hypoventi? And
yes.
Yeah, it'd be good to find out about them, and also the Austrian school, which claimed to have been able to pay quite a few viewers, actually, part-time and full-time, and they sort of disappeared. They had a public relations person, or representative rather, who was going to come to the remote viewing community, and did for a while. That was several years ago. Haven't heard word from them lately. But that's good. Yeah.
I vaguely remember they came up with an issue. They couldn't look farther than a certain amount of days outwards. They came up with a hiccup, and they just couldn't view past. Was it something like 30 days, 90 days or something?
I don't know.
I'll have to have a look back through my emails. I do remember reading some stuff on that a year or two ago that came about in crypto viewing, because I think we were talking to them about some stuff at one point, and I vaguely remember something about an issue where all their viewers, I think they had around about 100 or 200 on the books at one point.
Quite a few, well, in training or also working, yeah.
Working on the books, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. I know it was definitely over 100. Yeah, I vaguely remember they just could not get over a certain point in time. The accuracy massively decreased or something after they went, like, after 30 days or something.
So to put a point on it, so we know that there have been thousands and thousands of people trained in CRV and offshoots, but in particular, some of the ex-military trainers have trained hundreds and hundreds of people. I'm wondering if there are any active businesses among those folks, you know, Paul Smith students or Lynn Buchanan students. Can anyone name anyone who's actually conducting a business there? Because the aura that the impression I get is that just there are such businesses. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think you've mentioned all the ones that I pretty much know of.
Mhm.
Other than you do hear the odd person getting the odd paid piece of work, but I don't think you can class that as an ongoing full-time business or anything.
Yeah. And just to be clear, I mean, it's super difficult as Daz and I know, because we tried it in Aurora and now Daz was successful as a solo. And when you have a group, it can be very difficult, and it's also very hard as a solo. But you know, I know there's some people offering. I guess John Stewart is one of the fellows who has a small business in Pennsylvania, and of course Deborah has. There are also people who give lots of advice, I guess, and life coaching and that's. But I'm talking more about hard target businesses where there's a definite product or something that the viewer is helping, yeah.
I think that, and try not to blow our own trumpet, but I think the two most successful is us in Farsight. I mean, you may not see it as a client relationship, but the subscribers are paying clients.
Did you say Farsight also?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have paying, their subscribers, they have thousands of them. They're essentially paying clients and they're giving them a product. But, it's both models from both of us are completely different than what everyone else is offering, because it's infotainment rather than information.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's true about Farsight. I haven't followed them either because of that little blow up I had with Courtney about our book. I don't know. I'll just mention it briefly for people who might not have heard or might be interested. I wrote up some chapter material for the book that Deborah and I have just published on associated remote viewing. And it involves some of Courtney Brown's experiments, one with the lottery and also with crypto predictions. And I read all his materials. I watched his videos. I commented. I made notes. I wrote it all up. And I sent it to Courtney to ask him what he thought of it. And he wrote back saying, because I think he's a very inventive guy. He's a brilliant guy. But there's some problems with the way he works. Anyway, he wrote back and saying, I want to keep this friendly. I respect you guys, but you completely misunderstand what I'm doing. You can't talk about it. You don't understand it. And I was so angry, I seldom get angry, that I said, Deborah, would you reply to him? I'm not going to even reply to him anymore. So that was the end of that. So it is what it is. We have different ways of doing things. He's been very successful in some ways, and certainly publicizing remote viewing in his own unique intergalactic way. And so there we go.
I would say, though, John, that if I'm honest, because Courtney's been selling remote viewing products to people that essentially are his clients, with his videos going back probably, I've stopped working with him for about 3.5-4 years now, and I did work with him on RV projects that he sold for 4 years. So he's probably the longest and most successful RV business out there, whether you like it or not, really.
Yeah, he's surpassed Dames, I think, in some ways, who had a similar person and had to be very good at marketing and publicizing. Furthermore, I think Courtney, he's a professor of mathematics and also social science at Emory University. He speaks Swahili. He wants to bring remote viewing to Africa. All these are impressive and good things. But I guess I might as well say it. He thinks he's one of the world's best researchers on remote viewing, and I don't know a single professional researcher who agrees with him at all, and most won't have anything to do with him. So, look into it, see what you think for yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, but yeah, at the same time, he's had I got to be honest, he's had a successful business selling products and paying remote viewers for 9 years.
Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah, and as we just discussed and found out, there are not a lot of companies actually able to do that.
Indeed.
Yeah, but as I said, it's interesting that both us and Courtney have gone down a different route, and it's infotainment and content rather than hard-nosed business to client PDF kind of here's your report kind of information. I still don't think, and I've been in this selling RV services for at least a decade now. I still don't think that's possible as a full-time proper business for anyone. It just isn't there.
Yeah, and the third model is the one that Marty Rosenblatt's tried to create an APP where you sort of become a millionaire slowly, and that's going very, 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 very slowly too. Trying to predict outcomes of games both in groups and in individuals. And I did work with Marty for 4 years very closely, and respect him and admire his stick-to-itiveness. He's been at it longer than anybody, really. But that model too doesn't seem to be working, and crypto viewing with UDAS and Courtney's method seem to be generating a lot more interest and also money for the people doing it. Yeah.
I think it's because it's moved and it come about in cohesion with the way people now receive their information, which is and we're all a bit too old for this really as well. The younger generation, I see it in my son and my grandson every day. Everything they do is digital content. My son, who's in his 20s, he would not sit down and read a 20-page PDF document. It's just not anything he would do. But he will sit down or while he's working or on his break or anything and watch a 20-minute YouTube video.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, and Courtney was very keen. He's very good technically with his videos and everything too, and got the latest equipment. And you were too when you were doing those live demonstrations. So, absolutely, that's the way to go. And yeah. Well, thanks for those views.
Yeah. Well, if any of you guys out here think of any other businesses, maybe we can. Maybe John, what we can do is start a thread or a poll on the Facebook group and see if we can collect as much information on it as possible.
Good idea. Thanks.
I'm just wondering if there's some sort of experiment we can do along the lines that John was talking about, detecting numbers. Just detecting, not necessarily future numbers, just detecting numbers. That sounds really valuable.
Well, I've played and I've showed many times that I actually do it with physical numbers. And, when it comes to the lottery as well, you don't even need... because I've been playing with the Euro Millions, which is like 50 numbers, but you don't need 50 numbers. You just need the digits 0 to 9 to make any of the numbers. So if you get those down pat, that you can recognize 0 to 9, then you can pretty much make any number from those.
Yeah, just a little tidbit here. I came upon a research paper this morning while I was going through my files, which indicated that when you're trying to get numbers psychically, the first and last digit are more likely to be accurate. I guess the guy did a study of that. And there's some indication of that also in the Stargate archives about some of the experiments they did. And I noticed it myself the other day, actually, in a lottery that I did after a long layoff, got the first and last digits actually in the winning numbers. So I don't know if there's some, there's all these factors to look at. There's also like whether it's a two-step process. I discussed that in the video with Jeff Mishlove, so I won't repeat it here. But whether actually getting the numbers would be benefited by doing a two-step or even three-step process, which actually Ingo is doing, rather than a one-step process of like an immediate sense impression, which you sometimes get and which I sometimes get. So there's these several variables to explore, and this really has been a neglected field for 20 years. So now that there's a little more interest, I hope it gathers, and all these new people are flooding into the field. So maybe some will have some particular skill at it too. So that's right, Don. Let's explore different alternatives there for that.
The one experiment that I've done at home, I have a projection alarm clock. It shows up on the ceiling. And before I open my eyes, either to get out of bed in the middle of the night or before I get out of bed in the morning, is I will guess what the number is. And excuse me, I've seen a very high correspondence when there's numbers like 619, where they're, if you invert them, they're the same. Okay, 111, 101. If you invert them, they're still the same. Okay. Where I run into problems is where, you get the curvy numbers, like a 5, it's got that curve under there. Well, I might perceive that as a 3 or a 6. But yeah, I'd like to pursue this. This is an interesting idea.
Well, here's another little facet for you, Don. So Ingo Swann was trying to differentiate between curvy numbers and straight symbols. And he would count it a hit if he got the curvy number as opposed to a straight number. So again, there's so many little variables here that haven't been explored. I'm glad you're interested too. So let's stay in touch about that if you keep at it.
Definitely. Well, let me tell you this. I don't want to hog this, but my daughter and I were playing Guess the Card, and she had a regular deck of playing cards. She drew a card. I was laying down on a sofa, and so the first thing I tried to decide was whether the color was warm or whether it was cold, red or black. I decided that it was cold. So then the next thing I decided was, am I getting like a pointy shape or a leafy shape? Is it a club or a spade? And I got a leafy shape. So then the next thing was, am I seeing a face card or dots? And I was not getting, a facey type of thing, so it was dots. So then the next thing was, try to, is it like, a simple pattern like 3, or is it a square pattern? And it was a square pattern. So then finally I came up with, through a long series of these questions, 4 of clubs. And I said that, and she said, you looked.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't, it was just like the right set of like perceptions, are starting very small. So there's got to be a way to do this. I'm convinced there's a way to do this.
If I could just add quickly to that, and then I'll shut up. So Kahu Dave, Matt posted, have you ever tried it with a pack of cards? Guess the card you pull from the deck without looking. So Kahu Dave claims he has done a whole deck this way. And I've seen a video of another guy up in Seattle, his name's escaping my memory, who has a video of himself doing that. Cards are face down. He goes through all 52 and gets them all red or black. I think red or black is all he did. But anyway, so yeah, so people practice this, and there's some skill apparently that you can develop, or a natural ability that you have. I'll buy it.
Okay, back to you,
John.
guys.
Just to finish this up, do you have that document that we were discussing in Irva the other day, the Chinese study with the numbers?
Yeah, I could report on that, or maybe you remember it.
I can't remember what it was called, but Don might find that interesting because they had amazing hits there with getting the letters.
Shall I give a 1 minute rundown on that then?
Yeah, that was great.
So I think the guy's name is Dong Shen or something like that, and they looked for 10 years to find a person who could remote view with their skin, so to speak. And they found a teenage female in China who could do that. And they did, unlike many of the Chinese tests about blind sight, they actually conducted this one very carefully and in detail and very clearly written. And this girl, her statistics were 1 in 45 million or something, although they only did 39 trials. So that bears looking into, and clearly the Chinese are, totally more open to this than a lot of the Western folks because of Qi and other things. So yeah, that study should be also circulated.
Might be on the. I think I might have posted it in my Facebook group, Don. But it's got the results there, and she had some amazing hits, and it was like 5 random characters at a time, and she was getting all 5 at a time in some of the hits.
Yeah,
that sounds like a valuable technique. I want to know that. Do you have a link on that, Des, or can you post it?
I don't have it right to hand, but I think I posted it on my Facebook group. I'm not entirely sure though.
All right. So what is the name that I'm looking for again?
I'll look for it too. I might have it here on my desktop and stuff. Just to be specific, when they tested her to see if she was any good, they gave her like, ABC 1-2. ABC 1-2 was the first test they gave her. She's blind, of course. It's in envelopes. And then they gave her 3 tests. The third one was the same, ABC 1-2. And they figured if she was faking, she wouldn't give the same answer twice. But she did. She gave the same answer twice correctly, all 5. So they said, wow, this young woman is really excellent. So that led to the further tests. Okay, I'll try to find that for you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Des.
Yeah, no worries. Pablo, would you like to go next?
I've been researching about this a little bit, and a few of the letters or a few of the discussions between Ingo and Mishlo, for example, point me into a direction of the, a little bit more on cognition and neural connections. So I did, many years ago, a few years of applied math. And there I saw things that, were never taught at college or even school level, that were so basic and so simple, and you thought completely different about math, right? So I kept researching, and one of the things, I'm not sure if you can see this book, it's called Where Mathematics Come From. So this is from Lakoff. This guy has been studying, cognition on this type of stuff. And basically the question is whether mathematics exists as something natural or it's completely made up. And independently of that, there's a cognition function that more or less works around it. So the idea I've been working on is whether that could help in the RV of letters and numbers. One of the other differences I found out is, for example, Western versus Eastern alphabets and ways of writing and understanding are completely different at a cognition level. So that also is shedding probably not light at this moment, but I think that what I found so far is that the mental process for people to understand actual numbers or what they're being used for is what differentiates the results you will get from RV. So you may be even using numbers for a completely different thing, So cognitively and even mathematically, if you use them to represent the hours on a clock, it's completely different when you're using that, for example, to show order or to show, just summing up of quantities. So that if I am able to find more time and get some more results on that, we'll share them with everyone. But my final point here is that we may need to go a little bit deeper into what actually mathematics is doing to the brain and how we could perceive that through remote viewing rather than just focusing on the symbols, right? That's the only thing I wanted to share.
For me, see, it's hard because, and I've played with numbers quite a lot, and I'm playing with them right now, in that numbers only have a value for me in day-to-day use when they are representing a thing, like five apples, for example. Without the apples, the 5 is irrelevant. So in reality, for me, numbers are just all ideograms, really, for collections of things. So that's why I think it's problematic, because depending on what you're looking at, as Pablo's just said, its use changes every time you pick something with it. I think that's the issue I'm having. Excellent. So let's have a look in the window here, see what question. Anyone else in the chat want to ask a question? I think Henny had her hand up for a while, and she did an interesting project that I've been trying to get her to talk about the last couple of weeks. If she's still there.
Yeah, but why I had my hand up was related to remote viewing numbers and letters. Some part of the team or our current team, we have been doing some ARV targets previously, and we worked with the pool of Martin Zwarik, in which I think random collections of images from the net were pulled and were automatically chosen for targets. And sometimes we came across ARV targets that were supposed to be the good feedback, that were logotypes or letters like Google and stuff like that. And when we were doing the sessions, because we are mainly CRVers or RVers, we don't use the short form. Like we don't just do the ideogram and few sketches and move on. We usually go as we would progress with a normal session. So we went for those we went for those logos, but they turned out to be logos. And what was interesting is our minds or our sessions were representative of the shapes that were part of the letters that came back as a feedback, but we made like man-made structures out of them. So it was possible to get the shapes, even the colors, the background, but we thought that we were looking at actual like structures, man-made structures. So I guess there is some way of doing remote viewing on written text or on numbers, but the recognition part or the cognition part is probably going astray somewhere in the session.
Does anyone else have anything they want to add right now on the numbers and ARV stuff? Is that yes? No?
No.
Excellent. Let's move on to something else then. I'm just trying to catch up on the chat window here a minute. So John's posted the link to that article if anyone wants to find the link to that. I did have the article here on my desktop, but I moved it the last couple of days and in amongst my junk of files, I can't find it right now. Can't see any more questions.
I would like to hear about Henny's latest project.
Yeah, I think we should get her to talk about it a bit, if she doesn't mind.
I'm okay. We are okay with it.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, so now I just speak.
Yeah. Oh, so do you want to
ask questions?
Do you want to give people a little bit of an overview of it? Because I'm not sure if everyone's seen the link to it on your website or on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
And while you do, I'll post a link to it in the chat window.
Okay, so I'm gonna be. Do you hear me well? Because usually they tell me that I cannot be heard too well. This was a project that was inspired by. I probably think everyone has seen, or most of you have seen, an earlier project that has been done on the same piles of rocks, and it was done by really good operational remote viewers, whom I don't name out of respect because I'm not sure if they would like to be associated with the target or not. So I liked that project because I had the opportunity to see them working like full sessions, completely taped, and it was fun. But I had some reservations with regards to the findings, and it was something like I found it interesting. So just out of fun, I texted to Patrick at one time and he said, "Oh, do you have a target?" And I said, "Okay, well, yeah, I have a target for you." So I tested to Patrick, and what made me do it into or make it into a project was the fact that he came back with data which we shared in the discussion, which implied that there might have been some manipulation that was done to the footage or the photo that I used for feedback. And this is how I decided, okay, I can task it as a project, and it went out to 6 viewers. All of them did one original session, and if you have read the article or if you have seen the video, after the first set of sessions, I had to be a bit sneaky, and while we were working on our next projects, I retasked it. So they did actually 2 sessions each on the target. It was the rocks that are behind astronauts Neil Young and I won't remember, Charles Duke on the 16th Apollo mission. And the original project suspected that it might be a man-made formation, not a natural rock formation. So my task was exactly the same question. What is the unknown? Is it of a man-made origin or is it natural origin? And
in all three settings.
yeah, that's the video.
Okay, how much is it?
That's Charles Took
You
speaking.
can almost get local vertical on the shovel because you have to balance it to stand up. Okay.
All right, so yeah, that's part of the video. That is how it starts, and then we have a presentation there about the findings. I try to collect all the data into pieces of fitting information, and then we have the video. I would say that I'm quite undecided, or we are quite undecided, because there was a lot of data that indicated what looks like an impact and molten metallic material flowing and energetics moving around the site. People like John Dixon had processes of diamond formation and something getting crusted. So there were almost an equal amount of data indicating that it was some kind of natural force that created those boulders there. But we had really interesting data that indicated that it might have been not natural but man-made origin.
I did before I picked it up.
Shortly, that's it.
Penny, so I have to be honest, I've been very critical, not of your project, but I was critical of the original project many times with Jerry, the guy that ran the project, because, you know, I was worried, and I'm still am worried, that when they were doing the RV sessions originally, he was the tasker and he was the monitor in the room as well. So he was monitoring the remote viewers and he knew what the target was and he had a predetermined idea what the target was, which worried me immensely. Of which we've had very heated arguments online about, because he claims that all my thoughts on this are incorrect. But even some of the remote viewers, and you know, one of them in particular, remote viewing CRV trainer, who was one of the remote viewers, is very critical of of his results. And I just don't see it. I just don't, you know, because he sent me loads of pictures of it and he says that you can clearly see that this rock isn't a rock, it's a piece of machinery. And I look at it and I go, it just looks like a rock. So I'm just what do you think your results are indicating? Are they indicating that it's more natural, or are they indicating that it's more mechanical?
One of it, I would say it's like, well, I don't want to speak in the stead of the viewers, but we had a discussion on that. Most of them said they actually mainly feel it was man-made. I, as an analyst, would say there is about the same amount of the data saying it's man-made or natural origins. Why I tasked again is because it went through my mind. I'm practicing also with like low end, that's my cat behind me, with boring targets or low entropy targets. And it only occurred to me afterwards that if I task a rock and it's a rock, then the viewers might go to the next most attractive, most energetic thing happening there, which might be the astronauts being there. I don't know if you've seen the analysis, but I had some of the drawings popping up in the data, which was really similar to how the module, the command module that keeps rotating, orbiting around the moon surface while the astronauts glance. So there were like visual similarities between the orbiting module, which had one astronaut up there, and some of the sketches of John Dixon. So you just have to keep in mind all these possibilities when you are analyzing this data. That, okay, if I task a rock and it's really boring, the viewer might just wander off.
Yeah. And I say I'm critical on the original project, and although I wasn't on video because I didn't live in the States, I did actually work the same project and targets for Jerry back in the days, and my data did indicate back then of some kind of structured man-made craft as well. It's just that when I look at the feedback location of the rocks, I just personally don't see it. But there again, I have got my my own data. And to add to this as well, and to add to your project, I've actually been tasked the exact same target by 3 different people now over a period of 10 years, and all 3 times that I've done it, I have got I've drawn the exact same shapes, and I've got the very same man-made structures. So
this is what you see in our project when I asked, they said that, yeah, it's like during their sessions it felt more man-made. What we have to keep in mind with those photos, I think I have uploaded one which is like color contrasted and it shows more of the angular parts, but these rocks have been laying there and have been, sedimenting for millions of years.
Yep.
So actually, for us not to pick up that much of the actual potential man-made nature might be just the fact that it's been laying there and it's been going through this sedimentation process for like literally millions of years.
Yeah. Or we could all just be picking up on what the tasker wants us to report, I guess.
Yeah.
We have to consider that as well, don't we?
Yeah.
Lack of information. Yeah. But it's interesting, yeah. Or maybe because the moon's a bit boring, maybe we're not all looking at the rock. Maybe we're going to the next closest interesting thing that's there and picking up that.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Future human settlement.
I have to consider all this because over decades now, every remote viewer that I know, and I've collected hundreds of sessions on this now, that have been sent to the moon and Mars, have all picked up weird man-made looking structures. It's not just one remote viewer, it's like loads and loads of them I got in records going back decades now.
I was trying to keep the data referencing to Alpha and Foxtrot and the other viewers being their findings. I watched through all of them when I was doing the analysis, and there is a staggering amount of data repeating in their sessions and what our viewers were picking up in terms of Gemma, and I will have to remember what was the code name, I think Bravo. Really similar impressions. Gemma and Margot-Zsata and Alpha, really similar impressions. So they were like repeating pattern structures, functions. I just was not emphasizing it. So, well, Nick Nick said maybe we were remote viewing, the other people remote viewing the sessions or the video because some of them watched the videos afterwards when I linked the project feedback. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. So for all you guys, the links in the chat there. So I recommend you go and have a look at the website and have a look at the other projects as well that Henny and her group are doing. They've been doing some great work out there. And thanks for sharing that with us, Henny, as well. Has anyone else got any questions they want to ask on this project?
Oh, I do. There's something that there's this whole thing about your mind drifting. If you don't understand what you're looking at, or if you're looking at a photoshopped version of a photo where it was a man-made, but somebody airbrushed it into a piece of rock or something like that, if your mind doesn't realize, this is something interesting, will it like move over to the Apollo capsule itself sitting over there a couple of yards away? Is there any way to tell?
Well, you just tested me on that yesterday, so no. But
Henny's referring to a practice. Henny's referring to a practice target where she was drawing things so accurately, decided to give her a difficult target, which was a crushed soda can. It was all bent up. It didn't have any recognizable shape. And I photographed this on the kitchen sink. And what did I get back was a kitchen sink and things in the kitchen sink, like a sponge and whatever. That's very interesting, really. I think that's interesting data. It's like your mind, if it doesn't recognize it, it just moves on to something it does.
I think that's how AOLs form as well, Dom, because and why in CRV when they train you to do like the sensory stuff, and Paul Smith does this a lot, is that you and I've recommended it to my students as well. When you're going out for walks and stuff, touch, taste, feel, and sense as many things, building an internal library as much as possible. Because what I found with RV is the more memories and internal memories and database and feelings and everything that it can access to describe the targets, the more accurate the data. But once something's missing, then RV doesn't know what to do, because I think it relies on your past database to form those impressions. And if Henny hasn't got any intimate kind of feelings of a crushed can and drawing a crushed can, then it bypasses it and moves to the next thing that it can describe.
This is so interesting. I mean, there's so many interesting aspects to this thing that we're all sort of like, dancing around, but we really don't know how to deal with it.
Yes. Experience as much as possible, I can say, because, for example, I know from experience as well that targets where I've been to them in real life, like, because I've been inside the pyramids and stuff, I nail those targets every time I get a pyramid target, because I have all these intimate connections with it. I was there, I sensed it, I smelt it, I touched it. I knew what the dimensions are intimately by being by the side of it, that kind of thing. And I think that goes for all of us. Things that we know from day-to-day life that we've done over and over, that we know and we got this database of with us internally, they're easy for us to do as targets. But
good point.
Things are a bit more obscure, then that's when your memory or whatever the process is starts grappling for other information. And usually the next piece of information that isn't in your database internally is slightly incorrect. And that's where the AOLs come from, where it's got a bit of real information, but it's got bad information because it's not the exact piece of information in your internal database.
I wanted to add something, if I could, on this. I think that's a really critical point that you just made, Don and Henny, about the lack of gestalt for a crushed can. Gary Langford, who was one of the original researchers who came up with a proposal for CRV, made the point later on, when he sort of discarded CRV and said he had a much better method, that actually what we're looking at when remote viewing is the borders between things. Now, a crushed can doesn't have a recognizable border, whereas your sync objects do. So I think that's a really important point. I hadn't actually come across that before, such a clear example. So thanks for that, guys.
Well, I'm appreciating what Des was just saying about that's how AOLs are formed. I think that's going to stick in my brain for a while.
That's only my personal interpretation. Is I find that if I haven't got the exact experience that I've experienced of that thing in real life, and it's not in my knowledge, then my internal process goes for the next best thing that is in my experience, and that next best thing isn't 100% fit, which is why the AOLs usually aren't 100% fit. They're 50% real information, 50% wrong, because I just didn't have the internal capability to describe it. I just didn't experience it.
This just goes to show you that every remote viewing session is an experiment, whether you hit the target or not. In this case, didn't hit the target, but the data was really revealing. You got jumped over to something else. I think that's really important.
You learn more from your misses than you do your hits every single time.
I think this goes back to Ingo Swann saying that Hella Hamid was given a target. I think it was nuclear or something massively explosive, and she came up with a teapot, which was the closest her experience took her. So Daz is amplifying that initial point that Ingo made a long time ago. And another facet of that is if your vocabulary is really extensive, that can help also in describing things. It's sort of slightly different point, but people made that when I was training. The more vocabulary you have, and that's why people circulate these lists of feelings or senses or colors. So that's another aspect to it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Henny. We're going to look forward to all your new projects that you put up. We want first access. Are there any more questions or anything anyone wants to share? John, I was talking about Jerry Harfcock. Yeah, it was Jerry Harfcock that did the initial project. And I was tasked it 3 times. I was tasked the same target. Actually, I'll put the link in the window as well. I was tasked the same target once by Jerry, once by Rick, and once by Courtney Brown, all over a period of 10 years as well. And it's the same targets that, or in the location of where Henny's group worked, and also the original group worked as well.
What's ever happened to Jerry Hearthcock? He did some important work back there 10 years ago, hired people, trained people, paid people. It seems to pop up once every 5 years with a comment and then goes away.
He was online a month ago saying that he had a patent for some kind of consciousness gateway technology or something. I don't know, to be honest, on any of that. But yeah, he did pay. I know he did pay for a lot of training with Paul Smith and fund a lot of work back in the days. But I think he also fell out with Paul Smith. And
also, if you haven't seen his work, it used to be online. It may still be, where he has this technology which shows the remote viewer viewing an outline, and also you can see the session at the same time. And he had he had Paul and Lynn Buchanan and some others, and Laurie, I think, all viewing this target on this supposed crashed ship, I guess, on the moon.
Yeah, so that's the one we're talking about.
If you want to see how Paul Smith remote views, or the other folks do.
Yeah, just bear. And there are discussions about it online if you want to search it on the Facebook groups. But it does get quite heated between at least myself and Jerry, and even Paul Smith at times, because I remember a couple of years ago I dragged Paul Smith into it because he was one of the viewers, and Paul was saying that he didn't agree with the project setup and the analysis and a lot of other things as well. So you have to bear that in mind.
They also did the sunken object in the Baltic Sea, which Paul and others got as the Millennium Falcon out of Star Wars. It's this vast thing at the bottom of the ocean. Nobody knows quite what it is. That it resembles a Millennium Falcon, but whether it is, the divers have had all kinds of trouble. Equipment's gone blank when they've gone down there. I haven't seen an update on that in a couple of years, but that's another one that Jerry Hearthcock had these top viewers do.
Yeah. All interesting stuff.
I've got to ask a question here, and that was, you mentioned about Jerry and the tasking setup, and a number of us are trying to do practice targets, and we're creating taskings. How do you create a tasking without having an opinion on it, right? I mean, that was what you were saying, Des, that, he had an opinion, you were picking up his opinion. So
possibly. I mean, at this stage, because there's lack of feedback, I don't think you can throw that possibility out the window, that we might just be remote viewing what they want us to remote view.
Right. So is there any way to, can you go into a project as a tasker and not have an opinion on it? Like, I don't care. I don't really care what this is.
I don't believe so. Some people think you can, but I think, everything that I task, there's a part of me in there, and I have an opinion. You can't rule that out in some way. But I do try when I task, even though I may have a strong opinion of the target, I do try to word it and try when I'm creating the task to be as objective as possible. And in the tasking of the wording of it, try not to slant it. Like if you were doing the moon artifact things that we're talking about, I wouldn't write a tasking that says the remote viewer is to describe the crashed alien ship on the moon, because that is the literal wording of it. Yes, it's too biased. You at the very, very least, even if you have an opinion on it, which is quite strong, you should try to be as totally unbiased as possible in your tasking, wording, and intent when you're creating the project. I think this goes back to many discussions we've had, and I've had and wrote articles on. I think that an undiscovered proportion of all remote viewing is at some level based on a telepathic connection between everyone involved in the project. Because we're doing things blind, and we know what the tasker wants us to get. There is a connection there.
All right. So presently, the state of the art is just trying to use very neutral task wording.
But I would also say that if you're a remote viewer in training for the first 2 or 3 years or more, don't be involved and don't do any targets that don't have 100% solid feedback. learn your art first, know what you're doing, know yourself and how you work, and know your trust in your own ability, so that at some point in the future, when you do the targets with less feedback, you have a track record. You know yourself. You know if you're going wrong, where you're going wrong. I wouldn't as a trainee person. No, I never did it. I wouldn't do it. It's just not part of CRG training. You don't do these kind of targets until you're competent enough. And but you guys can do whatever you want. I'm just, giving you a little bit of advice. If you go down that route too early, when you don't know yourself, it's hard to determine if it's reality or if it's coming from you or where it's coming from.
Yeah, no, I get that, definitely.
It's a fine line. It's a very fine line, because at the same time, doing targets for the Eiffel Tower and bridges and stuff like that, and canyons and waterfalls can get boring really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's hard. It's a hard mix. But there are plenty of sexy targets you can do out there that do have, in my opinion, quite a lot of feedback. I would, for example, I would say that the Nimitz Tic Tac UFO event would be a fairly good woo-woo target to do, because you have lots of witness testimony and we have video film. I mean, you can't feed back exactly what's driving or inside that object, but that there was a physical object that was picked up by cameras and seen by eyes. So that kind of thing, I think, would be a valued one to do. But something like just a general ball of light in the sky with no, maybe a single image, no video, one witness. That thing, I think, there's just nowhere near enough information to be able to verify anything valid.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank
I'd
you.
like to throw in on that if I could. We did hundreds of targets in transdimensional systems in 3 years, and this issue of whether the tasker has a bias or an opinion, I don't know. We did so many of them. I would say that, you actually don't have a particular opinion. If you're trying to find a mosque somewhere or a pyramid, you may have an impression of it, and that's with you. And that's, someone's asking in the chat, how does the viewer get the information? Is it from the intent of the tasker? I tend to think it is, but I don't speculate much on this because we don't really know. But I just want to say, I think you can do plenty of targets without a presupposition that the tasker is going to have a bias. It just depends on what it is. If it's Maddie, what's her name? Maddie, that disappeared, that we did that jazz for many years.
Madeline McCann.
Maddie McCann, a viewer might have an opinion. Yeah, I think she's dead. I don't think she's dead. I think this guy did. I think that guy did. So that can definitely matter. But if you're just doing, especially practice targets, I don't think the bias need enter into it. When we did the remote viewing Nina Reiser murder that I guess I posted somewhere recently, Daz was a viewer on that, and I knew going in. I mean, my bias was that Hans Reiser had done it. This is a murder in Oakland. I wrote up a long paper that is published online, and Daz got some amazing data on that. But so I had a bias about who did it, but I didn't have a bias about where it was done and all the other stuff. So that can factor in too. But for sure, in a murder case, you have to be careful if the person asking has a definite ideas and knows the scene, or it's remote from him. Well, my general point is that you can do plenty of taskings without tasker bias, in my opinion.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with John there. I think it's not a problem on practice targets. It's on the ones with a bit more woo-woo and with not enough feedback. Maybe it works a bit like with the I think how the internal things work with us in, when we don't have a Rolodex of information. Maybe it might work on the same level, whereas if the target's a bit more woo-woo and there's not enough feedback, the process grabs at the next best thing to get information, which may be a bit more about the intent and drive of the tasker rather than, because there's nothing else to fill the void kind of thing. Again, we don't know, and that's what I keep telling people. We don't know enough about how all this works. If we could at some point get a bit more of an understanding of how RV works, we could quite easily and better develop it further. Tweak it, get that little bit more out of the engine, know how to enhance it. But at the moment, we're just all shooting in the dark here.
This brings up the question of this happened to me. Okay, I was starting to wonder whether I was remote viewing the picture as opposed to the event. It was almost like cheating. I don't really want to run out to this particular location. Let me just look at the picture, talk about the picture. I don't want to do that. I just, how do I train my subconscious? Actually go to the location.
Set your intent as you're doing it. But, as you're sitting down to do the session, I have a mantra or something I say to myself, and I say to myself, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get the information from the target, not the feedback, but the target that the tasker wants. So you're like setting your own internal focus. You're saying to yourself, this is what I want.
Yeah, I've been trying that the last few times, and it does seem to help.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll see.
Excellent. Sasha, you've had your hand up for a long time. Go for it.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this. There's a pre-verbal language that we have access to naturally that's conceptual. And what I found is when the notions that my brain still relies on that language for are the ones that are maybe too complex as units, right? To just be easily translated into verbal descriptions, into concepts that I can think about in words. So when there's a concept that's too complex that I can't think about in words, then that pre-verbal language kind of seems to kick in, where you're grasping the information in a pre-verbal way. And I'm just wondering if by practicing accessing that language through, I guess, exposing ourselves to like high information density texts or things that are really pushing the limits of our cognitive abilities would help us not just to better understand what's happening with RV, but also to better develop it. Because I've been thinking about this, and I actually think that it's using the same process. It's using that same pre-verbal language ability. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Can I get all a cult, please?
Yes.
Sorry.
I don't know
So
what you're talking
in
about.
occultism,
I
magic,
don't know.
tarot cards, and all the rest. Sorry, my dog is wanting fuss now because I'm talking. There is this idea of the universal language, which is emotional, symbolic. It's not verbal. Our verbal languages, we can translate stuff roughly from the universal language into them, but that's not the same thing. So maybe when you're trying to remote view complex concepts and you feel you have to resort to that universal language, I mean, maybe it's not because the primary thing is the verbal language and the universal language is secondary. Dog, wait. Shush. That I would say the universal language of feeling, you start that in stage one. What does this ideogram feel like? And then you translate that feeling into words, right? I would say that language is the fundamental language of RV data, and there's no verbal component to it at all. That's just our process of bringing it into terms that we can understand and share with other people. And it's always going to be wrong, and it's always going to be inaccurate, and it's always going to be an approximation of what we perceived. I just reminded of a session I did on the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID vaccine and whether there were unknown health effects of it. And I did like a really happy, joy session. But at one point I perceived the spike protein, and it looked like this like crazy big swirling mandala thing. It had all these colors in. It looked incredible. And what I drew was like a triangle with a little spiral. Like I drew this crap picture because I just couldn't express it. And I think when we express things in language, in English or whatever language you're remote viewing in, we're doing the same thing as I was doing when I had that incredible perception and I just drew a shitty triangle. It's always a dumbing down of the real data. Okay, I'm done. I'll put my tarot cards away now. Thank you.
But yes, and I think it's that idea of practicing remote viewing is one thing, but maybe practicing that translation of when you're in that stage, when you're reading something maybe where every word, instead of referring to something simple, a noun, an object, it's referring to maybe like nested relationships. And especially I think in academia, where a lot of the words that you're using refer to really complex notions. And so if you have a paragraph or even a sentence, you're not just describing, this object did this action. You're describing these really complex thoughts. And I think that pushes you to have to rely a little bit more on that preverbal notional language, because you can't hold all the words to describe all the information in your mind in that moment. So you have to rely on that.
You have to translate it into a lower level conceptual meaning thing, you mean?
Yes. So you're basically just holding on to these complex notions on your fingertips, right?
I mean,
and I'm wondering if
maybe on your fingertips, maybe it's in your subconscious.
Well, so I'm wondering if we could use that then, if we could test that maybe to see if you're practicing pushing yourself with material that has really high information density, that pushes you into that stream of thinking that is notional, rather than leaving you in the simple verbal thinking.
Drag us back into the conversation about the difficulty of remote viewing numbers, but when it's abstract concepts that are created in language and academia and logic, if you try to take those and directly translate them back into a body feeling, into the kind of feeling that you would have when you're remote viewing it, try and translate those into the universal language. And it's very difficult. They're very, very dry. There's very little to them. If you take the universal language as a state space that's like that big, the concepts you can express with language is a subset of that. It's much smaller. And that's why language is a useful tool, and we don't all just say like, oh, I feel like this, just tell about, like, it's good, but it's a little narrow subset, those kind of ideas that we can express. So I think I disagree, although I disagree lightly. I think the all those brain twisting dense academic passages are like, there's such a narrow extent of what you can feel in a remote viewing session. So maybe you could increase the accuracy with which you could perceive narrow linguistic constructs and abstract concepts and things by doing that. But I don't think you're going to improve the breadth of perceptions that you can have, which links in with the idea that a doctor who is trained as a remote viewer is going to be better at doing medical things. An engineer is going to be better at doing engineering things because they have the language, they have the concepts, they know what those things feel like. They can look at a body and go, oh, there's something down here, and perceive it and go, oh, that reminds me of cancer, and they have the feeling. It's not a word. Like a tumor doesn't have the word cancer attached to it. There is a feeling, and that doctor has come across lots of people with cancer and they recognize the feeling. And now they remote view it and they have the same feeling and they recognize it. And it's not because it's a complex concept, it's because it's a thing, it's a pattern that's emerged over and over again, just like the way young children learn words. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling on now. And Henny has her hand up, so I'll shut up. It's too close to 11 p.m. to be doing philosophy.
I think John wanted to add something as well as maybe Henny.
I just did in the chat, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Go for it, Henny.
I'm just quickly gonna say to Sasha, and Don can say yes or no, because he participated in that. But we have the upcoming project, which I won't name, only by say that it's 8429. And in that one, I think Don was really happy when he got feedback. One of the tasks was actually a patent documentation. And the remote viewers, none of them are engineers, and they were given a document. And I can say that they did really good in getting the concepts in terms of gestalts, descriptors, and drawings down. So what I'm trying to say is, I think it is possible, even though we suppose that the subconscious does not have the conceptual understanding. The viewers did really good with the patent, which was not their field of expertise at all. So I think it's possible to do even complex or abstract, high-level intellectual targets with remote viewing.
Yeah, I agree on that. And I think, to be honest, for me, because I'm a creative, I find it much easier to sketch things out, these complex kind of things from feelings rather than trying to express them in the words. But I guess we're all individuals on that. Excellent. So, any more questions here, guys? Because we're getting close-ish to 2 hours here now. So, if we've got any more questions, we can fit them in. If not, we can finish a little bit early. No one in the participants window there want to say anything or ask anything or share anything?
Oh, come on. We can't finish early.
I think we should, because no one's got any questions there. But I put a little link in the chat window there, and I'll post it again just in case. But as I said, a lot of us usually after these chats, we all generally meet up on Discord and have a bit of an after chat. Sometimes it gets a little bit playful and a little bit salty maybe for some of you, but feel free to come along and have a chat with us. Sometimes we're usually up for 2 or 3 more hours, to be honest. It depends on the on everyone's state and how many beers they've had. So we'll leave it there for this one today. I want to thank you all for some absolutely fantastic sharing of information and tips and hints and everything there. Some really great content today and things to definitely think about for the future.
All right, thanks, Des.
Yep, so thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend, and I'm trying to arrange some more guests to come on, so just bear with me with this. It's a bit of a weird time all round at the moment. It's hard getting out of people.
Thank you, Des.
Good night.
Have a great weekend. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, folks.
Night.